Good evening. My name is Jerome Borchers. I'm president of the Yellow Springs Arts Council. Thank you so much for coming this evening. We really have a nice program, an important program. I think for over 3 decades, we had many villagers and people in the area come together and do wonderful art. You know, performing art sometimes is a lot tougher than some of the others, and how much you have to put together, you know, the set, the rehearsals, and so on. Harold Wright is here to start the program, and so I want to introduce Harold Wright. Let's give him a hand.
Actually, I'm the understudy for Jonatha Wright. She was planning to be here, and but she took ill and was not able to make it. So she asked me if I would read the notes that she had prepared, and I'm very happy to do that. Yes, I actually talked to her yesterday. She got one of these deep chest colds, and I won't say I talked to her on the phone. I will just say we had a phone call, and she kind of barked at me like a seal for a while, and when she was silent, she did convey to me 3 things. And the 3 things was, she's very sorry she couldn't be here. The second, she's very glad you're all here. And the third thing is, these wonderful people that came to do deserve, even if they don't say a word, they don't have to say a word, they deserve a standing ovation right now. Well, I'm going to state, I thought about doing this in a traditional theater way and hiding these notes in a hat or something like that, but I'm actually going to just read them.
Okay.
Center Stage was a beloved local community theater in Yellow Springs from 1971 to 2003. During the more than 30 years of its existence, over 100 performances of musicals, including all of Gilbert and Sullivan, comedies, mysteries, drama, and many original works by community playwrights were staged. And Center Stage was run totally by volunteers. Even Gene Hooper, the manager and the artistic director, was a volunteer. Memories of this wonderful era and our community theater are vivid and rich. Tonight's panel will reminisce about the involvement with Center Stage over many years, and we hope this will spark your own memories to share with us and inspire some questions for our panel. Okay. And so what we decided to do, just go down over here. I have a brief introduction for each person, And I will start with Dinah Anderson. Dinah Anderson was involved with Center Stage in the 1970s. She has a bachelor's degree in speech and drama. At Center Stage, she contributed as an actor and a director, among other activities. She acted in Godspell. She directed Playboy of the Western World and Pure as a Driven Snow, or A Working Girl's Secret. Her children, Kate, Elise, and Spike, were also Center Stage productions. In Diana's years with Center Stage, she worked with many well-known local actors, directors, set designers, stagehands, and others involved in local theater. Dinah Anderson.
Thank you. Am I there? Okay. Can you hear me without it? I can project.
No.
No? Okay, 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 Kim. Okay, I want to let you know that I will refer to notes while I am happy. As an actress with a script, I do not do impromptu theater. So I have to have some notes. So as Harold told you, I came to Center Stage and became involved in the late 70s, mid to late 70s, about 75. And let's just get the elephant in the middle of the room, right up here, and let you know that I met June Hooper whenever she cast me in Godspell. And I absolutely, and soon, came to respect her as a force of nature. In my time with Center Stage, hers was the last word, and often the first one as well. But I deeply, deeply appreciate, as I think everybody in this room does, the amount of energy and devotion that she showered on this enterprise for so many years. Also respected her for her incredible talent and her knowledge of every aspect of theater. It was nothing about a play, putting on a play that she didn't know how to do. I think it was, in fact, her leadership that accounts for the much better than average quality of these community theater productions. And they were. They were really, really good. She was not always adored, but I believe she was always respected by just about everybody that worked with her. As for my part in Godspell, I was assigned to sing Turn Back, Oh Man, which is decidedly, if you know that show, a vamp piece. And Lynn Hardman, who was here this evening, was my daughter Elise's best friend at the time. They were in about 8th grade. And she is told at Curves any number of times that she was aghast when she was sitting in the audience and her best friend's mother came prancing off the stage and down the aisles in fishnet tights. That was such fun. You know, in my experience, in a plays, cast, and crew, whether we're talking professional theater or community theater or school or university or whatever, you get to know each other real well when you get together several times, well, 4 to 6 weeks, you know, and you're just about daily meeting. You get to know, and most of the folks that you know that are in this show you love a lot, and some you promise yourself that you'll never work with that ne'er-do-well again. When the relationships work, it's magical. It just is. And when they don't, one's professionalism is called for. Despite that we were an all-volunteer, non-equity house, and we demanded professionalism of ourselves. We did. So when an Antioch student in that ensemble cast for Godspell failed to show for too many rehearsals, I lost it and addressed her failing in that part. Jean was not too happy with me because that kid was a cutie and we really needed her to round out the cast. But she was not up to our standards of professionalism. As I thought about this assignment, and I have a lot in the past month. I have pictures in my head of that happy, happy time. For example, I was sharing with Jimmy. I remember coming into the front lobby of the theater on Dayton Street one Saturday morning. And friends, I tell you, that entire building was buzzing. There were so many folks in there, and they were so busy. It was pure as a driven snow that we were working on, or a working girl secret, you remember. Danny Schiff and Julie Steinhilber were painting that magnificent oleoac curtain, which is now, I believe, the property of the Historical Society. It is cumbersome, god-awful heavy, and impossible to mount, but it is so beautiful, and is so Yellow Springs. And they were wonderful. They designed it and painted it. Likely, Pat Ronald, Joan Evans, Becky, and others were working on costumes, and all the Livingston family, and all the Rose family, and 2 Peru children, and Mildred Meyer, and I don't know who else, were working on the set. Jimmy Rose, he was tech director at that time for that show, and he remarked to me something to the effect of, there could not have been a busier or happier place in town that morning than was going on at that theater. Walt McCaslin reviewed Pure for the Dayton Daily News, and while he gently panned the play, effectively what he said was, if you can go if you want to, but don't blame me. Yeah, well, he panned the play, but he was enthralled with a certain oleo act. And that act was the tiny 7-year-old Winky Mullins, one of the Mullins girls, Hadley Kenton, a head taller, together in belly dancing costumes. And then the third part of the act was Medusa, who was a very large boa constrictor. And Medusa was in residence at the Antioch school at the time. So she came to get in on the act. Lynn remembers that. Lynn McCowan was Hadley's mother, and she did those costumes, and she remembers that. Medusa apparently on opening night got a little freaked by the audience and commenced wrapping her big self around Winky's tiny leg, whereupon Hadley drops to the floor and seeks to free up Winky from all of that. Lynn said, and she still is laughing. You know, there were so many villagers of all ages working in that show that we didn't know if there'd be any people left in the village to come, there'd be an audience. And it turned out not to be a problem, as the kith and kin of that cast of thousands swell the house to full most every night. And furthermore, they stayed the whole time. It was way too long, which Mr. McCaslin mentions in his piece. There's a photo in the lobby of one of those hanging things in the exhibit area of the petite shoo-shoo girls. That was another act. In front of that oleoac curtain singing Don't Bring Lulu, which is a great vaudeville song. They were just adorable, all of them, and I quite lost perspective as a director. I just did. I loved them all. I had played Pegeen Mike, the female lead in John Millington Synge's Playboy of the Western World, in 1961 at the Menlo Park, California Community Theater. So I was delighted when my application to direct that show was accepted at Center Stage. Bill Farrell assisted with directing, and Judy Rose was stage manager. We counted in the program tonight, and literally, friends, there were 98 different people working on that show, one way or another. It starred Terry McDonald, a Brit, thank God, Leon Holster, Olivia Gladman, and of course, Becky Eschliman as the beautiful Pegeen, whose magnificent curtain speech was, take it, Becky.
Oh, my soul, I've lost him surely. I've lost the only playboy of the Western world.
As she sinks to her knees, facing the audience, downstage left. Terry helped us all with the Irish accent, which was at least hinted at by most of the cast. And because Terry played Christy Mann, he was on the set most of the time. And I think that the audience, hearing him, reckoned that the rest of the cast's Irish accent was good enough. I didn't exactly plan it that way, but I was always grateful for the help. Playboy was not panned, it got rave reviews. Jim Pierce, I don't know if any of you remember the beloved Jim. Jim Pierce took on building and dressing what became a perfect set for Playboy. It was 2 nights before opening, and that set was still mighty damn bare. So, diplomatically and with only a hint of hysteria in my voice, I said to him, "I'm just wondering, Jim, darling, if there's going to be a fully dressed set for this play." And he replies wistfully while twirling a little curl way up there in his African-American hair. He grabbed one and he says, "Dinah, darling, do not worry yourself. It will evolve." And it did. It always did. And it mainly did with Jim because he was willing to stay up all night, 2 nights in a row, and make it happen. Does anybody remember that in the late 70s, Jim always drove an old station wagon, and that it was loaded to the gunnels with stuff? That was Jim's props closet. One more thing about Playboy before I quit is I do wish somebody would direct that show and cast me as the Widow Quinn before I get beyond any ability to memorize a script. It's a bucket list item, you know.
Well, I think it'd be appropriate just to move to the other end of the thing and go there. So I'd like to introduce Becky Eschliman, who involved as an actor with the Center Stage, starting with her second production. She continued in various capacities as an actor, but also as costume designer, lighting technician, director, publicity manager, website manager, and board member until the very last production in 2003.
Yeah.
In the 1970s, she acted in several plays that Dinah Anderson directed. She recalls that Center Stage was formed when Antioch College Theater Department was no longer as interested in, as previously, in town and gown productions. Becky said that she became enchanted with the theater at the age of 10. I suspect she still is.
And just as an aside, that
That's all.
Yeah.
there, okay.
Good.
That age of 10 event was when my godmother gave me the book, The Diary of Anne Frank, and a couple of tickets to the production at Antioch. And that I was just enchanted and thought the live theater was the true magic. And fortunately, the same godmother gave me tickets to the productions ever after that. And when she moved away, somebody else took that up. So I was always enraptured by being an audience member and terrified of the idea of actually doing it until I got a little grounding in college and then started with Center Stage after that. With Playboy, the one thing that the set, Jim Pierce's Shebeen bar, the bar area, never got broken up until after the theater closed. It stayed backstage as sort of a storage thing. Now, for me, the whole concept of community theater involves several major kind of overall,
I think the people over there can't hear you.
and okay.
Hold it closely.
Certainly the main thing that is mentioned in the Yellow Springs News article, and is certainly true, is there is a lot of joy connected with it. Because theater, live theater, is so energetic, and part of that energy is joy. Certainly one of the main, probably my favorite aspect of working with community theater was acting. And part of the joy of that was the connection with the audience. And with Center Stage, because certainly with the Dayton Street building, because the audience was so close, you really connected with the audience. And there would be an interesting effect on matinees, because you would look out and there would be this sort of glitter because of all of the pairs of glasses that were catching the light that you can see. There was also the joy of the tight community that Dinah's referred to for each production, not just the cast, but all the people involved backstage, the people involved front of house, every single one. It was you were all working towards something that you really cared about, and that's sort of rare these days. There were sort of odd little joys, like one of the things I'm sure some of you must remember is what other theater gave you access to a beautifully restored Duesenberg at the intermission? You know, when Don Carr allowed his car to be seen when they opened the door in the hallway with the restrooms. With Gilbert and Sullivan, certainly the music was a true joy. But there are also some odder joys, like the misbehavior of Ron Seimer and Jim Rose and Bill Chappelle during rehearsals. I was involved in the production of Patience, and I remember in the chorus, the women's chorus sitting around, and Jean instructed us to think of nothing at all. and Pat Ronald sort of perfectly captured thinking of nothing at all and cracked us all up. I was also involved in Iolanthe, where we were all the fairies, and the costumes were hula skirts made of plastic and bubble wrap plastic wings. And we drove Jean crazy because we kept wanting to pop the bubble wrap plastic. So there was a lot of misbehavior that was part of the joy too. It was the variety of shows that were done and the variety of roles that it was possible to play was an amazing joy. I mean, besides Peggy, I was able to play a murderer in Ladies in Retirement. And that was, sure, you don't think of being a murderer as particularly joyous, but to be able to leap into somebody else's mind was. Now, a totally different part of the theater, the community theater experience is terror. There's first the terror of going up on a line, which happened to me in the Amazons, totally out of the blue. I was well rehearsed, it just happened, and there was this great blank space. There was also a time when I didn't go up in the line, but it was, I think, in dark at the top of the stairs when one of the actors went into a totally different act. And we had to sort of reel him back in. Another terror, which I certainly was aware of when I directed Bell Book and Candle particularly, was the terror in winter of illness and the weather. Bell Book and Candle was a memorable thing. As a matter of fact, it was the cause for any time somebody asked, would you like to direct again, I twitch. Because it was truly a Murphy's Law production. If anything could go wrong, it did. I was probably the only person in the history of Center Stage whose opening night had to be canceled because of both illness and the weather. Half my cast had strep throat, and we had a blizzard. Not only that, but the actress, the young actress who had done a brilliant job at tryouts, did not want to keep her blocking memorized. She made it up every night. And my poor rest of the cast, who again, reflected this professionalism, very graciously countered as best they could. That was also the night that was also the play when the weather got, I think, to 19 below. And we were rehearsing, I think it was on a Sunday evening. And all of a sudden we heard a waterfall. And the hot water pipe in the lumber room had broken and was pouring down. And of course on a Sunday night, it's a little hard to get in a hold of somebody. So, and the final thing, Bell Book and Candle, and this gets back to, in a way, Dinah's thing about the snake. The old adage of don't act with small children and pets.
Right.
Bell Book and Candle involves the little cat Pyewacket. And we found a beautiful little Siamese kitten, Pyewacket. Pyewacket, one night, was terrified. This is during rehearsal. We hadn't even gotten to where the audience could terrify her. She went up under the sofa, inside the upholstery, and it took forever to get her out, and we decided that is not going to work. So fortunately, Jean and Bill's very placid cat, sort of a Persian thing, was able to jump in as an understudy. And was sort of lay there. It wasn't Siamese, but it was at least comfortable on stage. The other terror is responsibility, because you feel so responsible as an actor to the rest of the cast, or as a tech person to the rest of the cast. You feel responsible, particularly as the theater was going under, to try and keep it going, is to somehow find out how to bring in more money. One of the more terrifying things that I did was costuming for the Music Man, because it was an enormous production. We didn't do it actually at Center Stage. We did it at Antioch Area Theater. And we borrowed costumes whenever we could, but I had to design both the little boys' band uniforms and the gym outfits with the bloomers.
Oh, you did that?
Yeah. I didn't have to sew all of them. Fortunately, I had a crew where I could cut them out and parcel them out, and they brought them back. But what was amusing was that Jean kept getting a call afterwards from some gentleman who really had a yen to buy those for himself. She never sold them to him because they were useful to rent out to other people doing productions of The Music Man, but it was an odd little sidelight. Speaking of other odd little sidelights, Center Stage at Dayton Street had some peculiarities, for sure. One of them was the beam, the great big beam across. It was peculiar for the poor lighting people who had to figure out a way of lighting the actors around it. It was a peculiarity for the set designers who had to figure out a way of not having people's heads cut off by having too high a level. And then there was the night that we noticed it was doing some sort of weird torque.
The beam?
The beam, right. And we had to really stop doing anything until it was repaired, because had it been left to go on, it would have fallen.
It leaned over, remember that.
Yeah.
Quite discouragement.
Did you make a noise while he was doing this?
No, we just sort of noticed it wasn't the same as it used to be. Okay. The lesson, I think, out of Center Stage, though, was, and particularly getting back to Dinah's experience with so many people involved, we needed a variety of productions to just both stay profitable. So you needed to put on the plays that people really wanted to come and see in great droves. But you also needed to give people experience with smaller plays to satisfy the artistic soul. So you had to find a way of blending those. Today it's a different world. It's harder to get 98 people involved in something like a production. There are too many other distractions like the internet. So I don't know. I would love to see if it could be revived, but I have my doubts. Yeah, and giving, one thing that the Arts Council itself has faced, the Historical Society is facing, giving an organization a home is one of the greatest challenges, because you have to spend so much energy on maintaining the home, renting the home, whatever it is, that it's hard to get the energy to do the activity that the home is supposed to be host to. That's it.
Well, perhaps we better move up this a little bit. I think it's time for a booming male voice. And I'd like to talk about Ron for a second. Ron Seimer. After Ron Seimer began working at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1976, soon he became involved with the music and singing in the Center Stage productions. From that time, he continued to work with Center Stage as an actor and with the music. Ron also did all the promotional photography. He joins many of us in saying that having a local theater company with a building where they could perform on a regular basis for many years was wonderful for those involved and for our little village of Yellow Springs. Ron Seimer.
Thank you. While I have a chance to thank you. I have to start by completing a story of Jim Pierce. Jim was characteristic of the people that I knew in Center Stage. I searched for a single word that best characterizes him. Thanks, Jim. And it is beloved. All of these people I found beloved. When you do a thing like theater, you get so close to people that their outer layer rubs away and you see inside. And what I found was so profoundly humbling and rewarding and cherishing and comforting and frightening. I'm going to stop the long list of words that I'm trying to mill up here, because this was Center Stage. And anyway, the story about Jim, one of my favorite stories is that his station wagon, I think it was a Buick, wasn't it? It was one of the longest station wagons that GM ever made. Jim made sure that there wasn't a spare cubic inch of space in it that wasn't being used for something. After Jim died, some staunch volunteers set about cleaning out his Buick station wagon to get ready to sell or something. Among the things they found in it was a bag with, I think it was from the grocery store in town, and the sales slip was in it. It was dated 2 years earlier. It was a 2-year-old frozen turkey. And that didn't surprise me a damn bit, because that was Jim. He was a saver. He had a sunfish sailboat. We lived on a farm about 4 miles south of town at that time. And he asked if he could store it in one of the barns on our place. And I said, sure. So he put it up, and we got up to a very high beam in the thing. So it was one of the first things you saw. And it was, for about 30 years, it was on display, Jim's sailboat up there, just like a lot of other people's washers and dryers and old pieces of equipment, lawnmowers. Anyway, I first became involved with Center Stage by accident. I had just moved to town. This was in 1976, I believe, and there was an audition for an upcoming Center Stage play. I didn't know about Center Stage. I didn't know about anything in town. I was brand new. And I had met Ed and Allison McKinney. Ed was for years the superintendent of schools here after this incident. But anyway, Ed and Alice told me that they were going down, and Ed was going to audition for a play. What was it? The Oh. Anyway, Ed got up for his audition, and he sang, "Oh, what a beautiful morning," and it was lovely. I was sitting there, and as I usually do, they knock around on the floor for a while and jump into my head. I've never done this sort of thing. Why don't I try it? And so I raised my hand, and they came up and said, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to sing a song," and I had never sung a song before. But remembering what Ed had done, I sang, "Morning Has Broken." And we both got hired for some reason. My esteem for center stage quickly rose after that. Memories of the activities there. Striking the set was always an amazing experience. It was a pain in the ass. Gene made sure that every nail, every tack, every screw was saved. If you had to hammer it out of a knot in a piece of wood, which also got saved, including the knot, you had to straighten the damn thing out and put it in a particular little box where that size nail or screw went.
You better straighten it first.
Straighten it first, and if the nail was ruined because the head was bent, you straightened out the head. Then you straightened out the rest of it and saved it. Amazing, but I don't remember buying ever a nail or a screw for any production we ever did there. They were rusty and kind of creaky, but they were used and used and used. Jean herself was one of the first dragons I ever actually met. Truly, but as a director, I respected her beyond most things I knew at that time. I remember one time she was giving, notes, what the director does after a performance. She stands up and tells us what we did wrong. Usually took a long time for her. But she was sort of maybe 45 degrees from me. So I moved over to where I saw her in profile. And the lighting at the time, there was sunlight coming in from somewhere, or maybe Terry Ronald had created a sun for us, which he often did. And her profile reminded me of something you find in the Rocky Mountains. It's about 1 million years old, and impressive by its contours, the angles of her face. She could have been 1 million years old, and I loved it. I'm a graphic, sort of an image-oriented person. I say that very humbly in the presence of David Battle, who is probably the finest design mind I've ever had the chance to sit next to. But that image of Jean still comes to me often. Another thing that was quite memorable was that she repeated herself very often with this one phrase: "Never mind what I told you, do what I'm telling you." And that applied to anything, a song, a line, a presentation, a piece of costume, whatever. And we changed our ways every time she said it. She was one hell of a director and one hell of a human being, as was Bill. Oh, the memories flow and then they ebb and they flow. Things ebb for me more than they flow these days. I'm old enough to remember a lot, but too shy to talk about some of it. Becky nailed me a while ago. I said I was one of the principal troublemakers in any cast, and I guess I have to admit that. One other thing I remember with Jean, she was a meanie, really a tough director, and she got what she wanted, or she would make us know about it. One time she was giving someone, I guess the whole chorus, although we had a music director, Ruth Bett, a really fine one at that time, she was chewing our behinds out about something, and I always remembered how tough she was, and I just, an impulse made me stand up and I give her a raspberry in front of the whole cast. I stopped her, and they applauded me for that. I gotta tell you, I have been ashamed of several things in my life. That was one that sticks with me. Yeah, she did earn it, but the result that she got from her demeanor and her style of directing produced excellence. There are very few professionals who acted and sang in center stage, but the audiences thought we were all professionals. I read some of the reviews, and I couldn't believe it was us, you know? Except that I had been in these things, and I am still in love with center stage. I guess this is going to rub off pretty quickly. I've got to quit talking soon. I could talk all night about that wonderful, wonderful, lengthy experience. One thing I do want to throw in at the end of this. Yellow Springs is known as one of the most artistically founded and populated municipalities in the country. And somebody told me once that everyone in this village sang and played at least one instrument when they were not acting or doing, you know, theater work. Turned out to be almost true. It was just wonderful. But I still, more and more every day, I look at this village known for its artistic nature, its artistic output, the different kinds of art, graphic, performing, music, all of it. And here we sit, this wonderful gem of performing artistry. We do not have a place to do it. We purloin spaces like the different spaces in the Presbyterian Church, the Arts Center down behind, across from the post office, and sometimes the Foundry Theater at Antioch, sometimes the Outdoor Theater at Antioch, although thank God not very often. But we deserve and need, and the community around us that looks at this artistic center deserves an artistic place to come and hear and see all these wonderful artists, professional and non-professional. I just want to leave it at that. We so desperately need that. I would do almost anything to help get that done. If anybody here could care to carry on that message, I would be your servant forever. Thank you.
And speaking of wonderful professionals, I'd like to introduce Flo. Okay, I've known her when we were working at Antioch together. I used to teach Japanese history and things like that, and I showed a lot of movies because I would just like to show movies, and was lazy perhaps, but she ran the AV room, and so I got to know her very, very well. Flo Lorenz. Many of us know Flo Lorenz from her position at Antioch College, where she's a graphic designer who created many of the posters, and later as the manager of the audiovisual department. Flo and her husband, Neon Hollister, were also active in center stage from the earliest days in 1971. They received a call from Gene Hooper, who posed the exciting challenge. Let's do community theater here in Yellow Springs. Leon directed one of Center Stage's first plays and many more until the Center Stage ended. Flo acted and sang and many of the musicals. She remembers that she and Leon were both in one of the last musicals, Noel and Gertie, based on excerpts from songs and writings of Noel Coward that had been performed with him by singer and actress Gertrude Lawrence, Flo Lorenz.
That was a long introduction, and you stole some of what I was going to say. I was going to say that in 1971, Gene Hooper gave Leon a call and said, how about starting a community theater? And so that's how it got started. And the first play was
The Amorous Fleet.
The Amorous Fleet, and I don't remember, we did that down at the Bryan Center. The second play was The Marriage, a Russian comedy. To me, it's fun to go to auditions and watch the people trying to do what they want to do. There was a young woman who auditioned for one of the principal roles, and she was so nervous. She was chewing her fingernails. But when she read, she was so good. And after the auditions were over, I said to Leon, oh, I hope you cast her in that principal role. And he said, of course I am. And that was this lady right here. And she did a wonderful job. I was mostly involved with musicals, and The Music Man was one of the extra splendid productions. But Fiddler on the Roof was, to my mind, the ultimate one. It was Xenia blew away in 74.
While they were doing Lack of Thought.
74, so it was 75 we did Fiddler? It was the year.
It was 73, I think.
We did 73, I thought it was
It
72.
was at the Bryan Center.
Yeah, it was at the Bryan Center, and...
I know because the first show I was involved with.
That's right. So, the week before the show was to open, there was nobody to do the lights and technical stuff, and all of a sudden, this person with this lovely British accent came in and said, do you need a little help? And that was Terry Ronald, who did just such a wonderful job. But, one of the things that's so gratifying about theater is you undertake a project that has a beginning, and as he was saying, the thing about a play is
younger people do
it has a beginning, and this group of people that you come to know so well, you all work together, and then there's an ending. It's just so nice that there's a beginning and work and a product and then an ending. There's not that much in life that happens that way, at least in my life. So it really was a joy working in the center stage.
Thank you. Thank you, Flo. And now we will hear, last but not least, from David Battino. David Battle. Many of you know David Battle, the artist who has designed the covers for the quarterly Antioch Review during the past 40 years. Perhaps it's possible that you were aware his winning design of the Peace Corps 10th anniversary poster in 1972, I think. It was adapted by the U.S. Postal Service into a commemorative postage stamp, of which at least 125 million were printed. During the same time period, David also created the logo for the center stage, incorporating it in a series of silkscreen posters that he had produced for 9 center stage productions. 6 of the posters are exhibited here at the Antioch Midwest Lobby Gallery as part of this special exhibition in honor of Center Stage Theater. If you haven't seen it yet, please check it out after the program.
who has been responsible for cataloguing all the wonderful history that has been on a website that I didn't know about until last week for the Central Stage, and that's Becky Eschliman. Put all that those of you that have seen the website must know what an impressive job that is. So we owe you a little bit of gratitude to bring it.
I have to give credit to Bruce Cornett for Surflet, who maintains it as a legacy item, because there's no longer a center stage to pay for it. So he's been very kindly just left it up for us.
But as I indicated just now, I don't have the memories of this great, wonderful group, because I was never really a part of that. And one of the things that I am puzzled by is that I can't even remember how I came to do those posters in the first place. And I'm honest about that. I just can't recall. I was never approached by anyone, but I must have to get involved. I know that it's possible that I was involved simply because I like the excitement of the artistic channel that's doing theatre work and film work also would spur me on to then start doing something. But I know that the first poster that I did was night of the January 16th. Do you remember that play?
No, I wasn't involved with that one.
Yeah, it was right in the very beginning.
Anne Rand.
Yes.
Yes, right. And so that's as far back as I can get. I knew it was the first one.
Yeah.
But in just how I got to do it, I know how I printed it and so on, and designed it, I think. But I don't know whether someone asked me to do this or not. Does anyone, and so I'm really asking anyone here.
Maybe Jean met you in the supermarket.
What?
Maybe Jean met you in the supermarket. Have a conversation.
And I knew Jean, and maybe she did.
Yeah, could be.
She might, but there were certainly no constraints by anyone on any of that work that I did. I designed the logo at the same time that I was doing the first poster and included that in it. And then I printed them myself in my own. I was working as design studio then, and in my house, back of my house. And I printed these as they came along and turned out and I was so glad when Jane Baker asked me would I be interested in being part of this panel. I wasn't thinking of the panel part of it as much as that it would give me a chance to review the work I'd done over those 9 productions. And it's been wonderful. I've seen them come together, and they turned up from various sources, and most of them are in a battered shape, really, because they were used as posters and got picked up by various people. And there were 3 that I knew of that were put into the Friends Care home by Phyllis Schmidt.
Oh, okay.
She was acting as an interior designer,
Yeah.
and for that establishment. And then it was only in this recent couple of years or something that they disappeared from there. But they turned up being turned in but to Scott Saunders in Antioch. And they were framed. And so, and I've been trying to get hold of Jeff Cooper because Scott Saunders said he turned them in to Antioch. Then there was some dispute of where they'd come from before that, and I'm still trying to find that out. So if anybody can fill me in on these wonderful gaps that I've got, I'd really appreciate it. I do have, there is a reason for the way they were constructed. That is, there's a great color image, sometimes one color, two colors, sometimes three. And then there's the logo. They're in a consistent format with the copy above. There was a technical limitation that I had when I was printing that kind of moved me into that particular format. And that is that for the lettering, that had to be done photographically. But I was limited by the size of, I had what's called a Lucy machine, which is I think that's a compression of the and a distortion of the words from Camera Lucida, which has a long history. It was technically copyrighted in the 1800s, but there's evidence that it was that kind of lens camera was used long before that. And it consisted, the version that I had in my studio was a covered box that you put your head in, and had a couple of wheels, and it moved a platform behind the lens up and down. So you could look at whatever you put on this board, you got an image on the screen, and you could control the size of it. And then you could lay a tracing paper over that and copy it, and so on. So it was a useful photographic tool. When it came to the silk screening, then you could take an emulsion of a substance which you put on the you do the tracing, and then you could put the actual type in place, get that image, and it would be then exposed to a light within this Lucy machine. And that was then transferred to the screen of the silk screen. But I had a limited space for that. So that had to be separated then from what I wanted to do in the illustrations, which all of those are cut by hand. These are the big bold shapes, and I could cut those and then cut the film on that and then stick it onto the screen. So there is a reason for that particular formatting. But I never considered that a limitation. It was a wonderful harmonizing thing and I was always intent on it being a series right from the beginning. And that's what the logo is about. It's all about a corporate, it's a corporate identity kind of thing. And so that was appearing on each one. Now I can, I'll move from this abyss of vacuum, rather, of not knowing anything about the theatre part much, but our son Mark, he was involved with CenterStage in some of the productions, and he had a mixture of tasks there. And at one point he was acting in one of the plays which was 1,000 Clowns. And apparently it was directed by a grandchild of yours. No, Leon's.
Ellen?
Did Ellen do that?
Yeah, she directed.
She did?
She directed that,
I didn't
right?
realize that.
Yeah. So, anyway, I asked him, he's now 50 years old, but this is a 10-year-old memories that he has. So I'm going to read some of these if you bear with me. And they're just his thoughts as they came to him, and he sent to me in an email, 1,000 Clowns. Ted Werner in the lead, Bill Mullins as Chuckles the Clown. Ted had to smoke in the roles, so I remember him practicing smoking in the back driveway, and Gene Hooper saying, "We won't pay for the cigarettes if you get hooked." And speaking of the back driveway, it wasn't paved, so to keep the dust down, this is at the back of Bryan Center, right? It wasn't paved, so to keep the dust down before a run of summer performances, they would pay to have a truck come and spread oil all over the ground. Not exactly EPA approved these days. Mark now, who is 50, is a physicist, environmental physicist, so he's interested. Charlie, Ted's son, Ted Witherup's son, was serving as a stagehand. One night, early in the run, there was some miscommunication between Ellen Crandall and the lighting person. The lights came up while Charlie was still on stage, moving furniture around. Charlie made a hasty exit by climbing out of the window that's on the set. He said afterward he felt like a burglar caught in the act. One night, during the scene in which I portrayed, had a tantrum, he said portrayed a tantrum. Well, he didn't really have a tantrum. I flung a coonskin cap across the stage. This was planned. It landed perfectly on the head of a life-size cardboard cutout of Chuckles the Clown. Not planned. It was all we could do not to burst out laughing. I turned pages for the pajama game, and perhaps another show too, but I can't remember. For Pirates, Jim Campbell played clarinet, Bob Turoff played the violin, Chuck Rees played piano, as well as many others. During intermission, Jim and one of the two others would head over to the Yellow Ghost Saloon for a beer. As intermission drew to a close, someone would go on a ghost run to retrieve the missing orchestra members. Ted Weatherup was somehow involved in Pirates too. And I remember at one of the cast parties, he read an insider's review he had written, summarizing the production and performance. I remember thinking it was exceedingly clever, and he managed to work in references to nearly everyone and their contributions to the show. In the pajama game, Flo Lorenz, are you listening? Was one of the leads. Babe. And Neva Turoff was her antithesis, the fawning bimbo secretary, who finally comes into her own at the end. I remember Neva saying to her boss and would-be suitor, "Why don't you send me your message in Morse code?" Of course, it's supposed to be Morse code, but Neva deliberately mispronounced it and it was very funny. I also helped out building sets and doing crew work now and then, often with Gordon Benecki and Bill Chappell. I remember being a valuable helper because I was small enough to crawl under the stage and bolt the platforms together. I also remember Bill Chappell, the Pirate King, working on the set and using a fearsome radial arm saw. It had a loose pivot and would occasionally jump forward and jam when the carriage would shift out of alignment. Bill was really a big guy, and to me, as a young kid, Bill seemed to be the only one big enough to safely manage this saw. Another fun part was using half-crumpled cardboard stapled to the stage and dry brushed with various shades of grey paint to make a very convincing rock edge to the stage for the cliffs of Penzance. Tony Benn was the modern Major General in that production. From Fiddler on the Roof, Leon and Flo in the leads, I remember a scheme to have a bunch of people walking around under a big shroud with just their heads sticking through for the dream sequence. It never came to fruition. This was a disappointment to me, as I liked the word shroud, but I didn't know what it was. So that's a 10-year-old memories.
Oh, that's neat.
I did bring along, which I should have used in the explanation of where I was describing. There's the Pirates of Penzance. That's one that isn't there. And this part is all hand cut, but that was photographically put on there. That's the division I was talking about. So thank you for your time.
I'm not sure what the time is doing. We have time
Can I
for
have
conversations, questions, please. And then we have Rubin is going to show us slides and talk to us about that.
Can I do a brief coda before I return to my sitter? Is that okay? Because I would like to, and I think I can speak without the microphone. My name is Era Beal. I am the managing artistic director of YS Kids Playhouse. I also work with the high school currently, and I directed the second to last show at CenterStage, which was Androcles and the Lion. And I directed my first show at CenterStage when I was, I think, 15 in 1995. And I do theater because of CenterStage. It was a wonderful, wonderful, like, I was being interviewed for the paper, and she was asking me questions, and I was like, you know, they just sort of let me loose, and I'm kind of shocked at that now that I think back on it as an adult, that they didn't, you know, like, I don't know. But I do really appreciate being able to experiment and do theater and learn from everyone who had come before me, even though I didn't necessarily work directly with a lot of these people. And I wanted to give you a heartfelt thanks, and just so you guys realize that what you did all those years ago continues to do magical, wonderful things in this village. I'm doing at least 7 productions in the 2015-2016 season, possibly 8. And those are almost all paid, first of all, which is fantastic. But within those productions, I'm going to work with over 500 children doing live theater. And I wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't for everything that you did. And so I just want to give a heartfelt thanks for myself and for all of the children in our community that we have such a strong base of the performing arts here in Yellow Springs. And thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Ron Seimer, we are working on finding a performance space, so you and I should talk some.
Good.
And anybody else. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have, Rubin, are you ready to go?
Yeah, as soon as we get the screen coming down, we'll be going momentarily.
Okay, would you like me to introduce you, or you can introduce yourself?
I can introduce
Everybody.
myself.
Okay.
I'll just say a few things about Charlotte and I started in Center Stage in the very early days, and one of the things, Charlotte was in a lot of the musicals. I directed 3 plays, acted in a bunch, and did a lot of the construction and set work over the years. And I'll just make one little comment. Since I had access to a machine shop at Wright State, and Jean knew this, she used to give me coffee cans full of bolts that I would take to the machine shop and rethread the bolts and rethread the nuts and bring them all back. And she was really hell on spending, and I think for all the 3 shows I directed, I never went over $5 in expense for any of the shows. So anyway, what I'm going to be doing this evening is I have slides and of many of the shows. One of them got videotaped, and we'll show that at the end here. I'm just going to show some slides of one of the Mikado shows for about maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'm going to go through that fairly fast. If you see a picture that you want me to keep up there for a few seconds to identify people, just say, hold it up a little bit, and I'll do that. And then at the very end, we're going to see about 5 or 6 minutes of the end of Arsenic and Old Lace. That got videotaped, and I have a video tape of that. And some of the people who are here were in that, like Jim Rose and Ron were in that production, and Ted is here somewhere. Is he still here?
Tony.
What? Tony. I don't see, well, Tony did the lead, and you'll see him. So right now, all I'm going to do is, we've got the screen down, turn the projector on, and I think it's going to be easier for me to do this from the back here. There's not going to be much narration, but this is the production of the Mikado, and at the old theater on Dayton Street, the old automobile place. And so I've got lots of pictures of the entire production, people putting makeup on, the orchestra backstage.
Very tight space.
Very tight space. Ruth Bent was the director at that point. People having a wonderful time getting all the makeup on. This was the horse that rides around it on the stage. And so we've got lots of, let me just get that sharper bit there. I got lots of portraits of people, and the machine is going to go, yes.
Wait.
So this is the opening scene.
Jim Pierce.
Jim Pierce and Tony Bent, the Lord High Kuba, and here's Jim. Oh, and the beam is up there in the last slide. 3 little maids.
That's what you did, you incorporated it.
Yep.
We always use young'uns when we could fit them in. Oh, there he is. This was it Webb?
No,
George?
George Talbot.
George.
Yeah, Paul Webb who did
It's not
this.
Paul Webb.
Yeah, in the horse.
George, someone from Fairborn.
Yes.
He once during rehearsal panicked because he couldn't get the horse off.
I think Paul did play it in the
He
first
played it
production.
in the first production,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
this got changed.
Who made the horse? Who made the horse?
Oh, I don't remember who did all that stuff. And you can see in this production, we did it like partially in the round, had seats on the side, bit of a thrust stage. There's that famous beam.
No, I wasn't there.
These are very old slides, right, the color, and that's, who's standing in back? That's
That's Ed Wallace.
Ed Wallace.
And Joanne Wallace in the middle.
Right.
And her son, right? That's-
And her daughter on the left. Oh, I don't know who the other one is. And the son, Ramon.
Ramon, yeah.
We know who they are.
And running the sound and lights. This must have been during intermission.
Oh, that's Catashaw.
Catashaw.
Yes.
Oh, and Sally Meyer, and one working with costumes.
Oh, yeah.
Tony. That's Tony.
That was Tony and
Tony
Ruth.
Ruth.
Yeah.
And Sarah
Case.
Case.
Beginning of Act Two. Rubin and
One of the things that Jean was remarkable at is many of the shows had huge casts, and somehow she could get them on stage and off stage, easily. It's just one of the things she was really good at.
The one thing she had problems with, though, is she did not read music. And so when she was directing Gilbert and Sullivan, she would say something like, "Go back to the tra-la-la." And there would maybe be 70 in the whole.
Oh, she and Ruth used to conflict a little bit.
Oh, he's planning on killing himself here?
Talking about it.
I think I must have shot a lot of this during rehearsals.
Aha.
Who was that Nintendo?
And if you see something you want me to
George
stop at, please say so. At last.
They were soon married after this.
Who was that? Carrie
Boyd.
Carrie Boyd?
Wasn't that also true of Bill and Cindy Jones in the first one? Wasn't that also true of Bill and Cindy Jones in the first Mikado production?
Something about the Mikado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This wasn't exactly a cast of thousands, but wow. Ah, Catashore.
Who was Kennesaw? Really?
Who played Caddyshaw?
I don't remember being the first one.
Who played Caddyshaw?
Ah, go away, go away. Again, I hope you're noticing all, there we are, all the blocking and the way people moved around.
Yes, the grouping is very. Notice the color of the costumes.
Yeah. Oh,
I still have that white lady.
Yeah.
remember, these were all shot with a real film camera a long time ago. Oh. Oh, that's David, isn't it? Yeah, our older son.
He's
My
now
goodness.
51.
Many of our sons are.
There's Jean.
Ron?
That's Jean, yes.
That's Terry.
Terry and
That's
Jean.
Terry and Jean.
Yeah.
Our youngest will be 50 on Monday.
The guy in
The milestone is
so
parents,
tall.
right?
Yeah. That's Jim Pierce, the one they were talking about doing all the building and all that. Oh, okay.
Oh.
He wasn't from Yellow Springs, was he? Yeah,
Okay, that's, yeah, that's all the slides I was going to show this evening.
May I give a sidebar to the Mikado?
Pardon?
A sidebar to the Mikado is that we use genuine Japanese kabuki makeup. You notice
Wow.
that the whites were extreme, the blacks were, everything was extreme makeup. It took me at least an hour and 15 minutes to put it on and 45 minutes to get it off after the show. It was real stuff. I think. Wow, good job.
How long did it take Caddyshaw? She probably had the worst.
About the same, yes. I was a slow book, I didn't know what I was doing, but she did.
So what we're going to see now is the last scene in Arsenic and Old Lace.
So Mickey Adams,
Mickey Adams, Betty Klein.
Betty Klein.
Johnny Williams.
Okay, so here is their sound coming from.
Millard Meyer.
John Shaw, who played the crazy doctor.
Is that McKinney in the middle?
That's Ed McKinney, that plays the superintendent of the asylum, and that was the
Oh, that's John.
the crazy mad scientist role. doctor. He does all the changes. And there's Ron, the police detective, and he's a homicidal maniac, and Ron is at that point just shaking his hands and saying goodbye. I caught some of it.
Can we get the sound?
Can the sound go louder? So here he just signed to put the sisters.
Mr. Witherspoon, why don't you go upstairs and tell Teddy what he can take with him?
Upstairs. I'll show you.
And no more, but you stay. We're waiting to talk to you. Yes, Mr. Witherspoon, just up the stairs and turn to the left.
So he's going upstairs to get Roosevelt.
Now, move. This house really belongs to you. Yes, dear, we want you to live in it.
This remarkable set was built by Jim Rhodes.
But you want a place to live.
There's a paper model of it out in the lobby.
I'm afraid now that's pretty indefinite.
It's nothing of the kind. Mortimer and I are going to be married right away. Mortimer, we're really very worried about something.
Oh, well, you'll love it, Happy Day.
Oh, we know we will. We're looking forward to it. That's why we don't want anything to go wrong. Will they investigate those signatures?
Don't worry, they're not going to look up Dr. Einstein.
Well, dear, it's not Dr. Einstein's signature we're worried about. It's yours. You see, you signed this next to Ken.
Of course, why not?
Well, dear, we hoped we would never have to tell you this, but you are a man now, and Elaine should hear it too. Dear, you are not really a rooster. You see, your mother came to us as a cook, and you were born about 3 months afterward. She was such a sweet woman, such a good cook that we didn't want to lose her, so brother married her.
I'm not really a rooster.
Now, don't feel bad. And Elaine, it won't make any difference to you.
Elaine, did you hear that? Do you understand? I'm a bastard!
Well, I guess I better get breakfast started.
No, Mortimer's going to come home with me. Father's going to run up and we're going on breakfast together.
Yeah, I could use some calm having quite a night.
Well, in that case, I should think you'd rather get to bed.
I do. Well, one moment, please.
We won't need the wagon, man. I've got my car out in front.
Oh, you're leaving downtown.
I said, go back to Indiana. There's some folks there who'd like to take care of them for the rest of his life.
Oh, well, Jonathan, it's nice to know you have someplace to go to. We're leaving too. Yes, we're going to Happy Dale.
This house has seen the last of the Brewsters, huh?
Unless Mortimer wants to live here.
Well, I have a suggestion to make. Why don't you turn the property over to the church?
Well, we never thought of that.
After all, it should be part of the cemetery. Good night, Andy. Well, I guess I can't better my record now, but then neither can you. At least I have that satisfaction. The score stands even. 12 to 12.
Mortimer always was a mean boy. He never wanted to let anybody get ahead of him. I wish we could show him he wasn't so smart. Mr. Witherspoon. Does your family live with you in Happydale?
I have no family.
Oh, do you consider the people at Happydale your family?
I'm afraid you don't quite understand. As head of the institution, I have to remain quite aloof.
Oh, that must make it very lonely for you.
It does, but my duty is my duty.
Well, Martha, if Mr. Witherspoon won't join us for breakfast, we should at least offer him a glass of elderberry wine.
Elderberry wine?
We
Why, yes.
We make this ourselves.
Of course, in Happydale, our relationship will be more formal. But here, you don't see much elderberry wine nowadays. I thought I'd had my last glass of it.
Here it is.
It just shows to see every the cast tonight. Do you have the lights off? All the police. We have to wait one more minute here. Because there are 13 people who are buried in the cellar. And here they come. Our stage director was in charge of getting 13 men every night. Are you there too? My goodness.
Jim Dixon was one of them.
We have the lights now.
Thank you for doing that.
So, thank you all. Thank you.